Hi, I'm Mike Leal, and I'm here with,
Jess Gant.
and we are here with our new podcast, The Heart of Petrochem. And the whole point is to actually, we live here in the Houston area, we work here in the Houston area, and the Houston area just happens to be the Heart of Petrochem. So what we want to do is bring to you some industry insights to let you know what it's like to actually work in the industry from the company perspective. I've been in the industry for over 30 years working in labs. And we're going to see some insights from the instrument industry, the instrument manufacturers.
Cheers. Yes. As Mike says, we're both in Houston. So I currently work as an application specialist and I work with different instrumentation. It's very fun for me to do. I really enjoy getting to know how instruments work and then teaching other people how instruments work as well. And so when Mike came to me about this idea about really coming together to try to bring in new industry focus as far as solidifying that educational response, that collaborative effort between our industry partners from new and old, I was really excited for that chance.
It occurred to me that lots of people here in Houston work in the industry, but there's a lot of people that don't really know what the industry is about, what it's like to work there. And it occurred to me that these are some pretty interesting stories. What we hope to do is to bring some people that have been legends in the industry. I've reached out to some of them and we will be talking to them in the future. The idea is to have a relaxed conversation over their favorite drink. So we picked the bar. Jess actually picked this bar. So where are we at, Jess?
We are at Flying Saucer downtown location. So one of my favorite bars that's in the city. What you can do here is one, drink a good beer, but also have a nice cozy atmosphere as well. So Flying Saucer if you're interested.
Okay, and Jess got to pick the first drink. So Jess, what are we drinking?
We are drinking a New York Amber Ale. I'm a big fan of ales in general, and this one I figure would be nice to start off with because it's easy and everyone likes a good ale.
That's actually pretty good. I'm enjoying it.
Cheers. I'm happy to hear that.
The way we're going to start off, we're just learning because we're chemists. We're not actually influencers. We don't do videos and stuff like that. But when I started a channel a couple of weeks ago after the Gulf Coast conference, I was talking to Jess and she told me that it would be interesting to have a podcast. She listens to podcasts on the way to work, but there's not really anything that captures what we do in the lab.
I mean, yeah, I that's very fair. It is, how I say, oftentimes we'll hear a lot about like very theoretical topics, very research focused, which is not bad. I really enjoy those podcasts as well. But having something where people can talk about what they're going through in the industry, what methods they're working on, maybe even talk to some of the people that made the original methods. That was one of Mike's suggestions. Getting these people, especially with ASTM, if you work in Petrochem, we all adhere to ASTM, right? So now getting to talk to these people who maybe created those methods or had a hand in their development and understand how they came to be, how they figured out what testing procedure would be best. And then maybe how we can improve upon them in the future. So things like that, I think it's great to have these open discussions. So very excited to be here and working with Mike, who has quite a lot of industry expertise to bring this idea home.
Yeah, I think to me, I love this industry. I love working in the laboratory. And I've noticed recently, I started going to ASTM meetings and meeting more of the manufacturers. And it's just really great to go to something like the ASTM committee meeting and meet the people that wrote the methods that we've been working on all these years and ask them directly, why are you doing this? That doesn't make any sense. And so to see where the sausage is made and be part of those discussions is great. And then plus, what really inspired me is those after hours discussions, just sitting at the bar and just talking about different problems that we ran into and how we overcame. I think they're going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. So what we're going to do right now is, since this is the introduction, basically, I'm going to interview Jess and Jess is going to interview me. It'll be kind of a casual conversation and you'll learn a little bit about us and you'll have an idea of where we're going and hopefully get you excited our next guest.
Cheers. So I have some questions I would like to ask Mike, so I will start off. So one of the questions I've been curious about is, as far as the petrochem industry goes, what are some interesting trends you've been observing since you've joined?
Interesting trends. Well, I can tell you a disturbing trend. Disturbing trend is that the people that are working in the lab don't know as much as they used to, right? So there's kind of been a brain drain. Those people that have been in the industry, in the labs, like let's say for gas chromatography, many people probably don't even know that the way we used to quantitate data from a chromatogram is you should get a strip chart report and you would physically cut the peak out of the strip chart, and then you would weigh it. And you'd weigh all your peaks, and then you would have a percent based off of those weights. That sounds crazy. It also sounds like a lot of work. I didn't actually have to do that, but I did come in at the tail end where we did have strip chart reporters, and I did see the tools that they would use to actually cut these peaks out. But that's kind of some valuable information, right? Using those old techniques and understanding, well, that's basically your norm percent or your area percent. It works just fine for what they needed. What I find now is that we've got a lot of instruments out there, and there's people that don't necessarily know how to use them or understand how they work. This inspired me to kind of work with vendors like the one that you work for and others. Worked with VUV Analytics. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know I've done a lot of work with them and with Thermo and with Analytics Unit. I like doing that collaboration. And so it's really interesting because you learn so much and you really can move fast. The things that I was able to do collaborating with vendors like you guys from the places where I came from, it would take years. And we did things in months. So that's what I love about the industry. I think that the technology is moving fast and innovation is moving fast, but there's a little bit of a slow uptake. It's hard for these refineries and for these chemical companies to bring these instruments into the fold because you don't really have the people that understand how to use them.
That is very fair. I do like how you mentioned this kind of focus on wanting to collaborate, but also to educate. There's a lot of people that aren't aware of some of the older instruments, how they function. Do you enjoy taking on that teaching capacity in everyday life? Is that something you're passionate about?
Absolutely. I've found that I've been fortunate enough to mentor several people during my career, and they've all done way better than I have. There's kind of a trend. They surpass any place where I actually had wanted to go to. There's kind of a price of having a personality like I do, where I like to push the envelope, and I'm an agent of change. And the problem is that, normally most people resist change. So if they resist change, they're probably not going to have the warm fuzzies around me because I'm kind of rocking their world. So I've experienced that a lot, but I'm really happy to see that people that I've mentored and shown how to do things, I love to see them exceed all expectations, even their own.
All right, cheers. Would you say that's been your proudest accomplishment in the petrochemical industry, or is there something else that you think that really shines what you are proudest to accomplish?
That's an interesting question. I never really kept score like that, right? Mm-hmm. I just kind of, I just like to bring change. I guess if I was going to say what I'm proud of, and I am proud of those people, I'm proud that they're friends of mine, and they're also kind of assets to me, right? Because now if I have a question that they're an expert at, then I can call them up and ask them. And so those resources are very valuable. I really enjoy that. But I think what I'm proud of is being an agent of change, an agent of innovation, right? The picking up those latest and greatest instruments, learning how they work before everyone else knows, and then being able to teach them how to use them. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
All right. Cheers. All right. And then you've mentioned some of the innovations that you're excited about. Are you able to share anything in specific or like specifically that you're excited about? Or is it kind of, I know there's some things you have in the works that are still a little bit hush-hush.
Yeah, I can give you some broad strokes, some things that I'm working on and kind of what inspired me to start my own company, Medrado Analytical Innovations. The thing is that the things that I want to work on, they're not necessarily things that a company would support, right? Because, they got a job to do. We've got to run their samples, run the products and go forward. And a lot of times the labs that I work at, all of the labs, well, No, I did used to work at a research lab too, but most of the time they're not research. Okay? They just want the numbers. And from my view, taking the time to do a little bit of research, it's an investment, and the payoff is what you get afterwards. And that's why I kind of push. And I know that I don't know everything. That's why I need to collaborate with other people. I learn a lot from them too. So I feel like it's funny to me. People come to me like I know a lot, and I still feel like I have a lot to learn. I love working in there. I love the change. So I'm going to give you a little bit of teasers. I have this idea on replacing LPG cylinders and making it so that they're much safer and less volume. Now, if I could do this, it would have a huge impact, right? Because you would minimize the exposure to chemicals. Because my idea, you would never expose a sample to the atmosphere, so no leaks. And even if there was a leak in the new container that I'm designing, it wouldn't be much. It would basically be the same amount that you find in a butane lighter. So it's just a teaser of something that I'm working on, but I have lots of ideas. I feel like the CDS is kind of starting to run its course, and so I have ideas on what to do there. If you have followed me on LinkedIn, I have an idea about flattening your quality control chart. When I mention this idea, everyone kind of looks at me weird, like you can't. And so my idea is I want to merge accuracy and precision, which if you've worked in the lab, right, there's going to be some fluctuation. There's some level that you have to maintain, but your accuracy might be a little bit off. And so I don't think that we have to live with that. So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. And I have posted something on that on my LinkedIn page that kind of explains the idea, but I'm still working on bringing it into a reality.
All right. Cheers. And I do notice, and people who watch this probably already know you from LinkedIn as well, but you have a very strong LinkedIn presence. So how did you go about curating that tone that you wanted to? Or alternatively, how do you come up with the topics you would like to discuss on your page?
Well, a lot of times I'm just kind of inspired by things that are happening, right? And if you did read my first article, Why the Laboratory Matters, that was inspired by the fact that I was doing a lot of work in a lab and I couldn't get any support above my own lab manager. That was kind of disappointing because if they would come to the lab and talk to me, they'd see where I was going and they'd want to support it. But there was like an active avoidance. And so I actually wrote my first article was for the company. I got into the newsletter. I contacted them. I said, "Hey, I got a story for you," and I wrote an article for them. They loved it and they posted it. And then I had another one, right after that, and my boss said, "That's too long. They're not gonna publish it." And I'm like, "Well, there's nothing stopping me from publishing it." And so I just sat down and wrote it. And then I was off to the races. I got a lot of good feedback off of that first article. And I think it's because I was talking about things that actually happen in the lab, things that people are experiencing. And I was giving a voice to those people that are working hard in the lab, never getting the credit, always getting the complaints, right? Always getting the blame. And I'm like, no, you guys, we need to speak up. We need to say something because we are working hard. And there's lots of reasons why you're not getting the data that you are expecting. It could be because there's something wrong with your sample. Let's start there. So yeah, my inspiration is what happens that week. It will remind me of a story or something that I was exposed to, and I'll sit down, and it doesn't necessarily take me that long. I sit down and write an article in about 15 minutes. Once I decide what we're going to talk about and just put it together.
All right. Would you say, as far as your passions go, do you have more passion for writing or teaching or trying out new topics on your own, more independently? Is there a specific area you think you're most passionate about?
I would say that I really like to learn. And so the only way you learn is you kind of got to push the edges, right? Push the envelope. And there was a part of me that I feel like I had an aptitude to write, and it took me a while to really kind of figure out how that is. Like I can, just like anybody, if you haven't written before and you start writing, there's that stream of consciousness that you just start typing and you have your story. And then you go back and read it, and it's kind of convoluted and complicated, and there's lots of stuff going in all sorts of different directions. And actually, I can tell you that where I really started exploring writing was through a long distance relationship where I was emailing. And so I would write really long emails, and the person that I was in a relationship with, she used to write long emails too.
Yeah.
So we just kind of fed each other, right? But I did notice that, my writing was a little bit all over the place. And so I tried to kind of tighten it up, tone it down, started using proper punctuations, and things like that. So there was always this little seed of writing growing, but it didn't really start to come out until really about a year ago.
Cheers. I don't know if it's very obvious. I had a list of prepared questions, and I've just kind of gone very off from the list I prepared. I was just like, oh, now a different question is popping in my head based on what you said.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
yeah, no, that's great. And then as far as goals for the future, how do you see this podcast developing? Is it meant to be kind of a space where we can all kind of, you mentioned collaboration. Do you foresee it being kind of teaching space as well? Or what are your ideas for where this goes?
Well, so I thought about that, and I don't necessarily feel like I'm a teacher because there's way more smarter people than I am, and they're doing much more professional work as far as like how to use this instrument or how to use that instrument, and I don't really have the time to really get that specific into it. So I don't really see it as being a teaching type of podcast. I don't really see it as necessarily my podcast. I see it as our podcast, right? Because the stories that I hope to share are not going to be just mine. They're going to be people in the industry. And it's going to be an opportunity for instrument manufacturers or just chemical company or petrochemical manufacturers that come in and kind of share some of their war stories, interesting life, how they got to where they got to. Just that, because what I'm hoping is that the audience that's listening, even though there's probably going to be a lot of us listening because it's about us, but there's going to be people that want to be us, right? And so we can give them a sneak peek of what's going on there and how you get there. And so I don't know exactly where this is going, but that's kind of my vision. I'm really happy that you're joining me on this little journey here.
I'm excited too. I think we are, I think, a good team from our past collaboration experience. I think we have a lot of our communication style suit each other. So I'm excited to see where this goes as well. Okay. So that was my final question, but I can make up more if we did.
No, we got to get to know you now.
Okay.
So Jess, are you from Houston?
No, background wise, I'm actually a military brat. So I born in Watertown, New York, and then my family moved all over the place. So technically the way I answer this question is usually I'll say I'm from Washington. That's where my dad retired from the military, and that's where I go home every Christmas. But I don't really have a state I really belong to. I do represent the New York Giants, though, if anyone asks football-wise. But cheers, yeah. And then as far as how I got here, so went to school in Indiana, and then I actually started off as an engineer. I won't mention kind of how that played a factor in it where I ended up, but eventually I did find my way back into the lab setting. And so it's been great to, one, be involved in an industry that has such a rich background as far as applications, expertise. I'll meet people at conferences who are like, yeah, I've been in the industry for 30 plus years, and after running these types of samples, and I know what some of the how to say the obstacles you'll face when analyzing these samples. And so being able to be part of the community, I do think is very valuable. But yeah, I got my start in the North, and now I am a Southern girl. As of last year, I've been in Houston longer than I was in Washington. So
Interesting. Well, so I can share with you, I met Jess at the Gulf Coast Conference a few years ago. She was giving a presentation on ICP, and I was in the market for an ICP. And so I went to her presentation, and I can tell you, like, one of the things that struck me is that you enjoy what you do. You have this kind of brightness and excitement about you that as you're speaking, as you're talking about what's going on, you seem to enjoy teaching and sharing that knowledge. And you also enjoy being challenged with interesting questions that you hadn't thought of. I remember asking you some questions like, oh, wait, no, I hadn't done that. Let me think about this. So what do you think about that? How do you like presenting?
Presenting element is not one of my natural skills. I am a mildly nervous presenter, but I do enjoy talking to people about what I've learned. I think it is crucial. You've mentioned in the past that like a lot of the knowledge appears like it's not being disseminated down from the older generation to the younger generation at times, or alternatively, even in the same company, sometimes information stays with one person. So it's hard to have that spread. So I do think it's important, as you were prioritizing earlier, to try to spread the wealth of knowledge, or spread as much as I can, I should say. Not to say I'm an expert in all subjects or even, very many, but I do enjoy teaching people about what I've learned and talk about the obstacles I've encountered, that way I can prevent those obstacles for the next person. And so I do appreciate that you enjoyed our presentation. It was a great topic. It was about ICP analysis on organic samples, which are very interesting sample types to do analysis on because their matrices can vary so much. And compared to dealing with water, there's other factors to consider, like viscosity. You're considering transportation inefficiencies in general. It adds a fun complexity to the topic. But I do think presenting is something that we should all get used to. I'm always trying to convince other people to do presentations at conferences because spreading that knowledge in the industry is important. You want the people you talk to be on the same level or to be able to get to that level. And so if we keep on doing things like this, or alternatively going to these conferences and trying to present challenges and solutions to each other, then we grow as an industry. So that's very valuable for me. But to get back to your question, I do presentations because they're necessary, but I do love questions. My favorite parts of presentations are when it's more interactive, or someone will raise their hand in the audience mid-presentation and say, actually, I don't understand the slide. And I'm like, okay, let me see if I can think, like it's like a puzzle. Can I think of a different way to explain this topic to someone in a way that they'll connect better? And so I think it's kind of at that point, it's a fun challenge. So preparing for the presentation, it's always a bit more stressful, but when I'm doing the presentation, it's a very fun experience for me.
Well, I can tell you enjoy the work that you do. Everything, even though it may be something different, you definitely appear to enjoy it. And that's actually kind of what kept me engaged in the presentation, and something that kind of, it made it so that I wanted to know more. I'm like, you're my kind of people. I need to talk to you more. So
I actually remember the question you asked. You were asking me about, because I mentioned sulfur, and you were like, so you did sulfur with the ICP? And I was like, yeah, we did sulfur with the ICP. And then you're mentioning like, that's not something I've really seen. And it was kind of fun to get to kind of connect and say like, yeah, this is why we were able to achieve this specific element in the analysis. So yeah, audience that asks good questions as well are always appreciated for presentations, right? But
well, here's the funny thing. So my company is a passion project, just so you know. I do have a day job. So in my day job, we actually analyze sulfur by ICP. It's so high that it's not that big of a deal. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I keep on, when I saw that, I'm like, I remember this discussion. Yeah, so we do this.
It comes back around. No, I've seen more people do it. So I think once everyone gets over that barrier, suddenly everyone's like, oh, actually, it's not too bad. We can all do that, I think. And that's a beautiful thing about exchanges like this.
So how did you get into chemistry?
I would like to give a thank you to my high school teacher, Miss Ramos. So she introduced me to chemistry in my whole class. And I remember she mentioned to us that this was her first year teaching after she had graduated. And so I was excited to work with her, and she was excited to teach and try to keep it as captivating and as entertaining as she could. She made us that way. I felt the passion for chemistry basically transferred from her to me. And since then, I ended up starting the chemistry club at my high school, very nerdy, I will say. And then after that, I decided to do my major in chemistry in college. And at the time, my parents were very open about what I would study. They said, if it doesn't work out with chemistry, you can always pursue other degrees. It's about making sure you study what you are passionate about. And I kept taking classes and I kept finding interest in chemistry. And I kept meeting people a lot smarter than me, which I think is actually a benefit of going to the university I went to, which I was challenged constantly. There wasn't a day that went by that I was just like, I know everything that's being taught here. And so I think that was, it taught me the beauty of failing and the beauty of really trying to collaborate with my peers to learn more.
What's your favorite part about working in the lab?
Yes. My favorite part about working in a lab is definitely figure out why my experiments aren't going to plan. So something Mike and I were talking about before is how we're both very big on trying things and failing and then trying to figure out why you fail. It's important to become used to failing in a chemistry lab. So you can't just always run an experiment and have all the theory worked out and to the exact results you expected. Oftentimes you can work out the theory to your best extent, right? And then you have other people who approve of your plan and you run it and it doesn't go nearly as well as you thought it would. And that's okay. I mean, that's the beauty of chemistry, is that we are all very used to failing, and it creates a really, I think, a nice humility. As we now go into the industry and work with more people, you understand that there may be something that you're not familiar with, that you may not know, and people are very open with you saying, I don't know the answer to that question, but I would like to find out. And I think that mentality is something that is far more encouraged with chemistry than I've seen encouraged in other places.
I think that's something we have in common. Only I don't call it failing, I call it problem solving. And I think that's the neat thing is because it's in my DNA, I guess, to problem solve. I need to know what the answer is, and not knowing is not acceptable. So I got to keep trying. And the more you try, it's kind of like a process of elimination, right? This doesn't work. Okay, let me try something else. Or why didn't that work? Oh, you learn something from every failure and points you in the right direction. So definitely, I enjoy the problem solving aspect of it.
I think that is, I can agree there. It's fun to figure out, all right, how can I pivot? What is the best way to overcome this obstacle? I think you were mentioning it before in our previous recording, but something that Mike has written about is not fearing failure. And I think that is very important. It's inherently, to grow, we do need to struggle a bit, right? We need to encounter obstacles that force us to think in a different way. Critical thinking, problem solving, I think of them as all kind of getting to the same point. Is you need to understand and figure out the fundamentals of how to go from the problem to the solution. And maybe along the way, you kind of stub your toe a few times or many times, and that's part of the beauty of chemistry and learning, is that you won't have the answer. You should not always have the answer. You should be able to figure out how to get to the answer.
Exactly. That was the last article that I wrote, was why trying matters. We're built to fail. We're built to try and fail and learn. I think that somewhere along the lines we got scared of failing, maybe because we don't want to look dumb, we don't want to look stupid, we don't want to lose face, those types of things. But really, the less you try, the less you're going to grow. You have to try, you have to fail and learn from your failures. So I definitely encourage you to fail more.
Cheers. I think that, I can fully agree there. Yes, it's once we encourage that, the people around us as well, like to not fear failure. Like if you have someone on your team who is wants to try something they don't know what's going to work, give it a shot, see what happens. Is usually the mentality I approach it with, because maybe you'll figure out something that I didn't see on the first try, or something someone else hadn't seen. So it's important to kind of foster that mentality that things will not always work out the way you expect in lab settings, and that is acceptable.
I think one of the things about just analytical instrumentation is that you can really stepwise learn things. You can take a parameter, maybe the flow settings, maybe the temperature, and just incrementally go up and see, maybe if you slow down your ramp rate, you can get better resolution between your peaks. Maybe if you up your flow rate, you're going to get sharper peaks, different things like that. And it's really I could spend all day just sitting there trying to develop a method and just tweaking everything one step at a time to really figure out how this thing works, which is actually kind of how I learned GC. I just sat there and played. Well, what is the biggest problem that you solved or that you're most proud of that you figured out?
Yes. So my favorite problem that I've ever solved really came down to units, right? And so if I'm honest, there's a lot of terms we throw around often. We throw ppm, milligram per liter, percent, et cetera. And for the most part, we've kind of standardized on what those terms mean. But there was a case where I was seeing some data sheets and the values that were coming out were off by a similar percentage, basically, a similar factor. And then you start to try to figure out, okay, where did that come from? Was it preparation? Is it response? What's going on? And then we figured out that when we looked at the CFA, the information there was saying ppm. So we got concentration in ppm. And we said, okay, that, we understand what that means. But then when we went ahead and dug a bit further, we found out that the reported value was in milligrams per liter. So the difference between milligrams per liter and milligrams per kilogram, now you have a factor of the density that you haven't really thought about or been included. And so that was something that we encountered. And once we figured out it was a density correction, that issue, we were able to input the right concentration values into the calibration, and the results look beautiful afterwards. But it's kind of one of those things where it's now back to the fundamentals, right? Like, you don't think it's going to be something as simple as the units maybe being a bit different, but sometimes the answer is the simplest solution, right? So that would be one of my favorites.
This is where attention to detail comes into play, because you can have everything right, but there's that one little thing in the cell that you clicked as milligrams per kilogram instead of milligrams per liter, and there you go, it just throws you all off.
I will say this person did a great job of preparation. Everything else, everything was perfect and in line. So it's one of those problems where everything else seems to be working. What's wrong with this? What's going on with this specific situation? So I felt very happy when I was able to solve that one.
Units matter.
Units matter, true.
So has there been anyone that you actually mentored?
Oh, this is a new question. Has there been anyone I specifically mentored? Admittedly, I think at this stage in my career, I haven't had anyone that I've had a continuous mentorship relationship this time. I've had amazing mentors who really inspired me and taught me a lot about the industry and how I can utilize previous skills and now figure out the best route to go in problem solving by utilizing previous examples and skills in my life. But I will say I have not had the mentor relationship or had a mentee quite yet. I'm open. I think it's really important to continue to spread the knowledge that we've learned over time and to facilitate the growth of the next generation. And so in the future, I would like the opportunity, but I have not yet had that opportunity.
Well, I think you actually have done some mentoring, but maybe not in the workplace. You were telling me about what you were doing before we met up today.
Yeah. I do some volunteer work. So I do volunteer. One of the places is the Health Museum. So I will go there and I'll teach kids about the human body, basically. And so I have this whole part set up where different parts can use, where I teach kids about the importance of the kidneys, the function of the kidneys for infiltration in the human body, and how we can figure out whether or not someone will be a good kidney donor. So I guess that's fair. I often look at mentorship in a very in a very formal way of, okay, you have a set relationship, you have predefined conditions, but I haven't necessarily looked at more informal relationship there. So I hope those kids consider me a mentor. That'd be wonderful. I hope that they got interested in science after coming to visit my cart.
I'm sure there's some kids out there that, because Jess showed them something in science, so they got excited about it. It doesn't take a whole lot to do that. It happens. And actually, this is a good point. I'll just kind of throw that out there. Every little kindness that you do, if you don't really know what it means to another person. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine's niece, and I hadn't talked to her in years. And there was a time when I kind of bought this book business where you print out books that have the kid's name in it. That was kind of a trend for a little while. And I made one for her and gave it to her. I even forgot I gave it to her. I talked to her a few years ago, so we're talking 30 years later. And she was like, I love that book. It meant so much to me. Even to this day, just thank you for doing that for me. And it really didn't even occur to me that, I was just trying to be nice to a kid.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot more to her than I even knew. So definitely take the opportunity to do those little kindnesses. It doesn't take much, but it can really impress some people and set them off on the right track. So I'm really glad that you're doing that. And it just elevated your status in my book when you told me about that.
I appreciate that. And I think that kind of ties in. I don't know if it was necessarily this recording or the one we were doing before, but mentioning how important it is to facilitate the growth of not just, like the people that we work with every day, but other people in the industry, to try to increase that knowledge and increase our capability to solve problems more effectively, more efficiently. Really, a lot of times when you mentioned you pitch some great ideas to people, but they weren't familiar enough with maybe the fundamentals to be able to, to understand what the idea could be. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because we all start off in a place where, we have less knowledge than someone else around us. And so I think things like this or opportunities like this will allow for us to bridge that gap more and create that collaborative space for people to learn more, and so we can tackle these problems a lot faster in the future.
Absolutely. What projects are you most proud of that you've worked on recently or in the past?
Oh, the project I'm most proud of, I cannot discuss currently, I don't think. But I can give some vague details. I believe that, once again, I think getting people answers more effectively is really important. So something I've been working on is maintenance videos for my company. I can't give too many details about who that is, but I will say that it's been nice to see this product kind of come together and get other people excited about, okay, we can have this kind of catered content to make things a lot more simplified for customers in the future. So I think I like when I see I see at companies there's an ongoing development of databases for people, or to kind of say, okay, if you need any support, this is where you can go to get some answers before you have to start reaching out to people. So I think that's something I've been really excited about. And then as far as personal projects, really into cross stitching at the moment, but that's a different. I know I have if you ask anyone, I have a lot of older lady hobbies. I like to knit, things like that. So I'm working on some projects there as well.
Well, you kind of hit a good point. So the podcast is meant to be casual and not very formal and not necessarily tied to anybody's job, right? So all of our opinions are our own. Don't hold our companies accountable.
Exactly, yeah.
We've talked about how you got into chemistry and what your favorite parts are. So what kind of aspirations do you have? What are you looking forward to doing? You're pretty young in your career. Where do you see yourself in the next 5-10 years?
Oh, that's a good question. I see myself continuing to increase my knowledge about the industry, about the world around me. I see myself taking on, more interesting projects as far as analysis go. And I do like to see myself. I think I have had some great opportunities to travel and, and work with people from different countries as well. So doing more opportunities, collaborations with all these different people would be wonderful. So I think I'm doing a lot of what I would like to be doing right now, collaborating with you, collaborating with others. I've been very fortunate. I do see myself continuing in that direction, maybe in an area where I get more trainer focused. I think my favorite parts of any job are teaching people, training. That's actually how we met originally, was during a presentation I was giving at a conference. And I think tasks like that where I can pass on information that I've learned is really important to me. And then having people push back and challenge me means I can grow even more. So that's what I want. I want to feel challenged consistently. I want to make sure I'm not the one that has all the answers. I don't think I ever will be, but I think it's kind of fun to continue to seek out those answers and figure things out that way.
Well, so you asked me earlier why I'm doing this podcast and what I hope to gain out of it. So I'm going to flip the script here. Why did you decide to join me on this?
Well, one, you had a fun shot. You were like, we'll go to a bar every week. I'm just kidding. But it was involving getting in kind of meet and interview the legends of the industry. These names that we hear all the time with ASTM methods, EPA methods, these people that we've seen who are actively going out to make changes and who have a lot of experience in instrumentation or regulations, and getting to pick their brain a bit and understand their how they've grown their development over time. And I think that is very interesting to me. And also the idea that we can use this as a vehicle to get knowledge out there. Like there's certain, just about ASTM, there's certain methods where there's some confusion in certain areas of how some things are done. I think talking to people who create the methods, like you were mentioning before, would be interesting. I think it would be interesting to be able to now have a resource people can look to where they're saying maybe they've searched up a specific topic and they're like, oh, there's this podcast that's about this exact topic, and they kind of dive into it more. So I think kind of bridging that gap, having people figure out what the right resources can be in the future would be something I would hope to achieve with the podcast as well.
Actually, that's a little preview, right? Because ASTM, the ASTM committee meeting is in Houston this year, and we're going to be there, and hopefully we'll get a couple of interviews. I'd like to get the inside scoop on some of these methods. I feel like there is a misconception that the ASTM methods, you have to follow them exactly. They're really written in a general case, and so we're supposed to interpret the method and apply it to our needs, because one size does not fit all. And so I hope to get that message out there, and I hope to have the people who write the methods kind of say, yeah, you need to know what you're doing and you need to apply it in the right way. That's why we get a chemist to do this, right? So, so stay tuned. We're going to get something with that.
Yep. I guess turning that back on to you as well. Is there anything you're especially excited about in the future that's coming up that you would like to share with the audience possibly?
I really want this to be a platform for us, meaning the industry, right? Because if you live in Houston, you probably know somebody or maybe is related to somebody who works in the petrochemical industry in some form or fashion. You just really can't get away from it. And sometimes you don't know, like, what's dad doing at work all day, or, what's my sister doing, or anything like that, right? So we want to give you a peek. And the thing is that most of the time you don't really get that peek, right? Because people don't want to talk about it. And I want to talk about it. This is why I kind of am doing this independently as my own company, because now I can say whatever I want. And basically we want to be able to shed some light there and inspire others, right? One of the big things, I mentioned before, is a lot of us in the laboratory don't know how to communicate. We know numbers, figures, methods, and theories, but when it comes to presenting in a meeting, we shy away from it. When you try to talk to somebody who doesn't know science, it's hard to communicate with them. So I want to pave the way here, like, hey, there's more to you than just the lab, and you got a lot of information to share. So let's open it up and let's talk about it.
Cheers. Yeah, I think that is incredibly important as well. There's all these industry giants, and they have this knowledge and they've been spreading it for years, but now we have new people coming in, or people who aren't familiar, as Mike was saying. And that, once this world kind of becomes more open, then we can really start filling those gaps with this knowledge that we have. So cheers. I'm excited to see who else comes on and what we can learn from them as well. We were talking about before, maybe some people specialize in different instrumentation. Like you mentioned, it'd be fun to have an X-ray person, it'd be fun to have a Raman person, an ICP person, all coming on to discuss what they've learned and some common industry tips that they see that could be helpful for everyone.
Absolutely. There's lots of industry manufacturers here. There's lots of petrochemical companies here. And I've already kind of run this by a few of them. And everybody's excited at this idea, right? Nobody's talking about us. And so we like to talk about ourselves. There's a lot of good energy around this. And really, I'm hoping that this is kind of the seed that grows into something bigger. I do lots of things. I get involved in lots of projects. So to spend my time to dedicate it on one thing is kind of rare because I've always got stuff going on. But that's part of the reason for getting you involved, is because you will be kind of my anchor. Like, okay, remember we're doing this? Like, okay, yeah, I gotta do that.
No, cheers. I'll say I think we have a good balance to us where Mike's very go, 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 go. And I like to kind of see all the details and the plans as well. I think it's together. I think we'll make a strong team as we bring the podcast together.
Definitely. I think this is going to be, I think it's a good thing. I'm excited about it. I'm excited that you joined me. I really appreciate you doing that. Because it takes your time, right? And this is all voluntary. This is all, we just decided to give it a try. Nobody's paying us to do this. We just decided to give it a try. And I think it's a fun project. I think it's a worthwhile project, and it's going to plant lots of good seeds in the industry. So if there's anybody that you want to hear about, any instruments you want to learn about, point them in our direction. We will talk to any and all newcomers. And I especially would like to get in contact with people that are in the lab working on some innovative projects. I'd like to hear what you're doing. Let's give you a voice and let other people know like what's actually happening out there. Now, obviously, you don't want to give any trade secrets away, but just maybe some broad concepts and maybe how you approach doing them. Because a lot of times the work seems like the laboratory is going to be dull, right? But actually it can be pretty exciting. So I hope that you'll join us and come online and share your knowledge with us. Definitely.
Cheers.
Well, I appreciate your time. We have more coming, and we think it's going to be a worthy thing to play on your playlist. Hopefully you'll learn some things from us and get excited from us. And like I said, this is our channel, not mine. This is the Petrochem Industries channel. And we enjoy what we do here. And we hope that you can see that and start to be excited about it too.
Excellent. I look forward to interacting with more of you guys in the community. I have not been in the industry for nearly as long as my co-host here, Mike, but I think that's the beauty of this as well. There's a benefit to hopefully the audience, but also to us as we get to know the people that come on as well. So I look forward to anyone who comes on and I am meeting some of you guys in person.
Well, until next time, go out and try something you've never done before. How hard could it be?
Cheers. Bye.